Twitter, X. It's been a while since I've been live. Been rather busy, things at work and stuff. And it's one of the reasons why I'm broadcasting from not from my usual location at home in my home office. I'm currently at work, but I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about a couple of things that have happened since last week and this week that I think are of significant importance. Um, as you know, this week we had the Iowa caucus, or caucuses, and the results were pretty interesting. There's been a lot of hubbub made or to do about the results being that they're historic, that Donald Trump won by a historic margin. But I don't think that people are understanding the exact synopsis or the exact situation as to what occurred in Iowa. Um, as you know, and I posted this repeatedly through Twitter, through X, since the caucuses. If we look at the statistics from the Iowa Secretary of State, there are over 752,249 registered GOP voters. Okay, that's basically rounded to 753,000. Of those 753,000, there was only at most, I believe, 70,000 or 60 to 78,000. Well, let's say 69,000. Nice round figure. Voters that actually went to caucus. That's not even 16% of the registered voter base. That's a very small margin if you think about it. And of that 15%, half voted for Trump, which was 50 some odd thousand, and the remaining other half was divided between Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, with a very, very small smidgen of 0.5%, I think it was, that was to Vivek Ramaswamy. Needless to say, everybody's pointing out that Trump won by a massive margin. That's not necessarily the case. As you can tell, that there was at minimum, I would say, 690 something thousand, 700,000 voters that did not show up. That's a huge margin, and because of how huge that margin is, the degree of uncertainty is it's relatively high. So to say that Trump won by a huge margin or a massive margin or historical margin is, in all due respect, it's not accurate for that reason. Also, it's been widely known that with the Iowa caucuses, whoever's won the Iowa caucus has not necessarily won the general election or won the nomination, rather. So we have yet to see. Vivek Ramaswamy suspended his campaign. I think it was too premature, given given how small a margin of voters it was that actually showed up and voted. He could have done better by just continuing the campaign through New Hampshire at the least. This would have given him a better sense of what to look at, because he said that the figures that they had seen, or the projected figures they had seen, was totally different from what they experienced, and that the reason being is, in all honesty, I think the weather had a lot to do with it. The cold weather. I mean, it kept a lot of people from showing up to caucus. So, for that reason, that's why the turnout was so low as it was. You can't gauge an election a nomination election in this case on a very small marginal turnout. It doesn't work that way. And I think that what's going to happen is we're going to see a totally different result coming New Hampshire next week, and some of the other primaries later on down the line. And I mean, even the fact that Trump is still going to these court dates and he's still got these trials, that's another uncertainty that we have to think about. So it's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out. I mean, I would mention, or I would say that I would not put I wouldn't place any bets on the results of the Iowa caucuses as of yet, for that reason. And now, on a different subject, I wanted to touch on also was the fact that what's been going on in Eagle Pass as of late. It's incredible. The Texas military, or Texas National Guard, has taken over Shelby Park and has denied access to the U.S. Border Patrol, CBP, Customs and Border Patrol. Texas is arguing that they're being blamed for the deaths that occurred, and I believe there has been a misunderstanding with respect to that I think needs to be cleared up, and that is that what has been said by the U.S., and they've reiterated it, they've stated it in supplemental briefs at the Supreme Court, they reiterated it, is that there were 3 individuals, a mother and her 2 children, that died, and there were 2 other immigrants that were in distress. Now, another thing that was also mentioned in the news, but it was not corroborated by the federal government, was that there was a total of 6 immigrants involved. So, and it appears that there's a confusion with respect to those 2 in distress and the 3 that died are possibly being the same immigrants. That's not the case. You know, the argument that has been on social media as of late is the fact that they're saying, oh, well, why did Customs and Border CBP advise the National Guard about the immigrants after they were already dead? Well, the statement that has been given by the federal government, and they've been adamant about, is that their emphasis was not on the 3 that died as much as it was more an emphasis on the 2 that were supposedly still in distress. And unfortunately, by the time DPS and the Texas National Guard went out there, Mexico had already rescued them, I believe. I don't know if that's the case. I have been purposely waiting to see if there was a report coming from Mexico in the news with respect to this situation. There hasn't been yet. I'm still looking just to confirm Mexico's version of the events. But I think part of the issue here, and this is what a lot of people are missing, the argument isn't that the U.S. is holding Texas responsible for the deaths, those 3 deaths. That's not the issue at bay. The issue that is being discussed right now is the issue that Texas is denying CBP access to Shelby Park, access to the boat ramp, access to that 2.5 miles of the border. That's the center of discussion, because legally, Customs and Border Patrol has rightful access to that area because they maintain the border. When we're talking about the border, we're talking about the Rio Grande River itself, the riverbank, the river. That is the actual federal border for the U.S. Going into Mexico. So now Ken Paxton has responded. There was a letter that was issued to Texas, I think yesterday, saying that they had until today to release control of Shelby Park, or the Homeland Security was going to seek legal action through the Department of Justice, I believe it is. Now, Ken Paxton, our Attorney General here in Texas, responded to that. Basically put his foot down and said, okay, that's not the case. Okay, for some reason, the video cut in and out. I don't know if this is going to go as a second video on my Twitter feed or if it's going to be part of the same video. But I'll have to try to fix it later, if at all possible. But as I'm saying, the fact of the matter is that it's the access that is the issue, not the deaths. And it's going to be interesting to see how Homeland Security responds to Paxton's letter. He points out a number of things that in that letter, but unfortunately, there's things that he should have further addressed that kind of contradict or put questions towards what he stated in the letter. He talks about, obviously, the USA versus Arizona lawsuit back in 2012, and saying that lawsuit never did talk about the constitutional issues or constitutional crisis issues with respect to immigration. Now, the thing is this, for those that have followed the lawsuits that Texas has been filing as of late with respect to immigration, there's one lawsuit in particular where, and it was one of the border buoy lawsuits, if memory serves me correctly, where, give me a second here, I want to straighten this out. I feel like there's one of the lawsuits where Texas, as their defense, brought up that they were a sovereign state, and talked about their sovereignty and the fact that they were being invaded. Now, the judge in that case said, okay, well, this is the thing. The constitutional definition that you're referring to in Article 4, Section 4, about protection against invasion is talking about a violent attack against the U.S., such as he used Ukraine as an example. He says, and obviously in that case, the United States would come to the aid to defend her borders. But he said that doesn't necessarily mean that the invasion would mean the influx of immigrants coming into the country. That's not considered an invasion. Now, that case is still running. I think that's the case that's in the appeals at the Fifth Circuit in bank. They're going to have an in-bank hearing, I think, in May. Suffice it to say, but the other lawsuit in SCOTUS is the Supreme Court of the U.S. is the one where they filed a supplemental saying, okay, this is what's happening at Shelby Park and Eagle Pass. This is what's going on, and they're requesting that the injunction be vacated, and that immigration or Customs and Border Control can go in and eliminate or cut the concertina wire and move the border buoys. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out now. And this is one thing that I posted on Twitter earlier, was that Ken Paxton says that they got the hearing, the in-bank hearing in May, but there's a lot of uncertainty as to how SCOTUS is going to handle the other lawsuit, because if they vacate, basically it's kind of saying, okay, this other lawsuit is moot because we're going to allow the U.S. to act, do what they need to do to secure the border, or to continue border operations. So it's kind of right now waiting to see exactly how this is going to turn out. And if the U.S. decides to file another lawsuit with respect to Shelby Park, then that's going to expand the play field. It's going to change the game just a little bit. So we have basically we're gonna have to wait and see see what the next move that the U.S. is gonna do. They may decide to file a lawsuit. That's the most likely scenario. I think they can even go as far as to get a court order saying, okay, Texas, you got to give these guys access. You got to relinquish the park. I mean, because there's already a lawsuit. There are two lawsuits in movement right now. One of them, they filed the supplementals to argue the situation in Shelby Park. So, if that's already being proposed, I don't understand what the benefit of another lawsuit would be. I mean, they could probably get the court order based on that. Maybe they could even bring in federal authorities to arrest the National Guard. I don't know if that's possible. And detain them for obstruction. I mean, it's all possible. I mean, that would also probably involve detaining and arresting Governor Abbott as the ringleader, I guess you could say, as the man in charge. Maybe even the Texas Attorney General. I don't know. The reason I say this is because this scenario right now is unprecedented. It's very unprecedented because this has never happened before. People are comparing this to saying, okay, this is going to be the start of a civil war. I don't know if that's the case. I hope it isn't. But the way this is playing out, because it's unprecedented, anything is possible at this point. It's just a matter of waiting to see what the United States' next move is going to be with respect to the response that they got from Ken Paxton earlier this afternoon in the letter that he wrote and sent to Jake Meyer. We'll have to wait and see how this plays out. In the meantime, we have to keep a mindset that, number one, the arguments that are being broadcast about, which is state sovereignty and the U.S.'s failure to fulfill Article 4, Section 4, or Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3. Those are not necessarily valid constitutional arguments in the sense that I was mentioning earlier, because of the fact that there's already been a judge that has given his opinion with respect to whether or not those are valid arguments. Now, like I said, that case has yet to be appealed, and we will have to wait and see. But we have to understand that sovereignty may, give me a second here. Sovereignty may be more or less a non-starter issue because of what's going on. We'll just have to wait and see. We'll see what the next steps are. In the meantime, I mean, that's basically what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to give my viewpoint on. Like I said, I did not want to say anything prematurely. I wanted to see how this was going to play out, and that's one of the reasons that I didn't come on sooner as I could have. I had been wanting to go live for a couple of days now, but I wanted to wait to see exactly how this is going to play out, and this is the way it's playing out. Wait and see. With the Iowa caucuses, as I said, we can't place our bets on Iowa at this point because of how small the margin of turnout was. We'll have to wait and see how things play out in New Hampshire and these other states when their primaries come, because that's where we're going to see for sure who the winner is, who's going to be winning the nomination, who's going to be representing the conservative movement going forward. I mean, even who knows? Even Donald Trump could be kicked off the ballot. I mean, it's too soon to tell because everybody's waiting on the Supreme Court to rule on the Colorado case to see whether or not he can be kicked off the ballot. And I would hate to see they rule against the former president and the domino effect that would occur post case, because you know that it's all going to fall into place one way or another. Well, I digress, and I just wanted to, talk a little bit about this, and I'm going to try to go live again here soon. I'll be monitoring the situation here with Texas and the U.S. government, and if anything changes, well, I'll be back live again, and we'll, discuss whatever the changes are. In the meantime, thank you for your attention and your time, and have a good evening.